Hello there, my name is Clarence. Last year I started a lead generation agency from scratch and I managed to scale it to 50k per month within just 6 months, and that without any prior experience. I achieved this by relying entirely on cold email outreach and of course leveraging advanced AI and automation tools whenever I could. This helped me handle time-consuming tasks like lead generation, email personalization, and follow-ups. One of the biggest challenges B2B businesses face is a consistent flow of new leads and client acquisition. Without a steady flow of qualified leads, it's nearly impossible to sustain growth for any business. Many businesses rely on outdated methods like generic cold emails or poorly targeted ads, which waste time, resources without actually delivering any results. On top of all that, the competition is fiercer than ever, making it even harder to stand out and connect with the right prospects. To illustrate what not to do and to show you how I've done it, let me quickly show you guys 2 email templates. I'll get into the workflow in a second, just let me go over this quickly. So on the left we have a very generic email and on the right we have a highly personalized one. I'll quickly go over both and then go over the differences. So here the subject line, there's no personalization. On the right side, everything that's within brackets is a variable, so you could view that as personalization in some way. Hi, I help companies improve their sales with automation. We have a system that gets leads for businesses like yours. It's easy to use and doesn't require much effort on your part. Lots of companies have used it and seen great results. You could too. Would you like to hop on a call to learn more? Let me know or book a time here. I think it goes without saying that this email on the left wouldn't get very many replies. The reason why is because everyone could see this is a bulk email, bulk sent email. The time wasn't even taken to insert the first name or the company name anywhere. So on the right, one of the emails I actually used myself quite a long time ago, maybe one of the earlier ones. In the subject line already, I used their company name. I also suggest using someone's first name, being like first name, comma, quick question, things like that. Hey, first name, came across company name on LinkedIn, like a little line of personalization. I'll go over that in a second. I specialize in helping companies like company name connect with your ideal customer profile and scale your sales pipeline by leveraging AI and automation. Or done for your lead system ensures you get buy-ready leads without burdening your team with additional setup or time commitments. Here's the kicker. So here I introduce a guarantee. I always suggest you guys to use a guarantee. And then here's the social proof. I also use type of company as a variable. So in this case, let's say they are a grocery store. Then this would read, in the past year, we've worked with 200 plus grocery stores. It would be a lie. And please don't lie in your cold outreach because the customer can easily get through that in a sales call. But just as an example, it would demand authority because people think, oh, he has already worked with 200 different grocery stores. He must know what he's doing. Let me get him on board. Well, I think it goes without saying that you guys could easily notice and spot the difference. As I said, the first email is very generic and could be sent to anyone. It's not likely to grab attention or spark any interest. The second email, on the other hand, feels personal and relevant. It is clear to the reader that the sender put effort in understanding the recipient, making them more likely to respond. But here's the challenge. Creating personalized emails like the second one takes time. Up to 30 minutes for just one email to be done manually. Luckily for both you and I, that's where AI and automation come in. With the right tools, you can scale this kind of personalization to hundreds or even thousands of emails in mere minutes, saving you a lot of time while also dramatically increasing your chances of any success. Now, let me show you the N8n workflow I personally use for lead enrichment, which is just a fancy way of me saying how I gather detailed information about my leads, which I can then use to either fill in templates or write personalization. Normally, this process would take hours if done manually, but with this workflow, it is completely automated. Not only does it save a ton of time, but the AI follows precise prompts. It eliminates human error, ensuring data is accurate and ready to use. So what you see on screen are 3 individual flows. In previous examples or in previous videos, I've put all of them together, but in this case, I want to go over them one by one to show you what you can get from each source. of information and how you can use that information to then fill in the templates. We'll start off with the trickiest one, which is to scrape the personal LinkedIn profile. Then we'll go on and I'll quickly go over both of these, the company LinkedIn profile and the company website scraper, because they're essentially the same. You just use a different URL within these HTTP requests, but the code for filtering that HTML then is exactly the same. You have to imagine that each of these workflows is being triggered by a webhook. For those who aren't aware, a webhook is simply a signal it receives from somewhere. Well, in this case, the somewhere is the CRM. So a change in my CRM, which for a CRM I always use Airtable, but a change within my Airtable would trigger this flow. For those who aren't aware or aren't familiar with Airtable, I've been talking a lot about it in other videos, but I understand that there might be some confusion. It's very similar to Google Sheets. I'll quickly show you so we're on the same page. So this is one of my Airtables. This is a giant lead list. You can see the first name, full name, their email address, and so on and so on. And here is the important information, like their personal LinkedIn profile, URL, their company LinkedIn, and their company website. So how I got this lead list is just from Apollo. There's a video on my channel if you're interested. It's the best database for getting lead lists. So now you know what happens in here. So once a change is made inside of the Airtable, let's say I change the status of one of my leads to enrich the lead, which then triggers an automation, which then sends a webhook to start this flow. So for the HTTP request node to make a request to the right address, in this case, I need the information from the lead. That's what I do in this node. It's a very straightforward setup. You just log in with your credentials. You set the operation to get. Well, what you can see here is just the name and the table of my Airtable document. And this is a specific individual record ID. You can see over here it's set to expression, meaning this can also be a variable. In most cases, let's say you're doing this automatically, every lead has their individual record ID. So you want this to be an expression, this one to be exact. If you would replace this one by this one, this would just get the individual's record ID each and every time, meaning you don't have to put them in manually. And then on the right side, we can see the output from triggering this node, which is just all the information about the lead. Well, it's the same information that was in the Airtable I showed a minute ago, like their first name, company name, LinkedIn URL, whatever. So the distinction between this flow and why it's a lot more elaborate than the other two is because in this case, we're using an API to call upon a scraper. Why do we need to do that? Well, that's because personal LinkedIn profiles are a lot more protected. I think it's because they're data sensitive, so their privacy is more protected. And to kind of circumvent that, or what that means, before I go about circumvention, what that means is that we can't just fetch the HTML because LinkedIn has some built-in code which prevents us from getting all the HTML from the website. So we have to use a scraper. I use a scraper in Apify, literally called Personal LinkedIn Scraper, made by Curious Coder. It's a very straightforward process. So for the scraper to work, we need two things. We need two HTTP nodes to be exact. I'll go over the merge node and everything on the right in a second, but first let me go over the HTTP node so you know how to set up an API request and to also how to retrieve the data once the scraper is done. So first let me dive into this one. So for this one, it's important that for this HTTP node, it's important that you set the method to post. So what happens? There is a scraper. The scraper is in Apify, which is just a giant marketplace for scrapers. And we want to activate that scraper with the information that we have. In this case, with a specific personal profile LinkedIn URL. So to do that, we post like an action. So we send an action to a URL, this URL. This line over this part of the URL over here, this is like the ID of the scraper. So this is different for each and every scraper, but the rest you can just copy and paste. Here you fill in the authorization method because you need to have an API key to access the scraper. If you make an Apify account, you get your own API key, so not to worry. And then on the page of the Apify actor, there is just a bunch of things you can fill in. All the instructions over there are very clear. I went over it in previous videos, so I won't go over it again. I think it's a bit redundant because the information is very clear and it's just a copy and paste process. The only thing that's of note is that what you see over here in green, I pulled this from the left side. So I pulled the LinkedIn URL from here. I can show you what this is on the right side. So whatever here is in green is once again what's called an expression. As said before, each lead you pull from the Airtable has individual information. So you want this to be different each and every time. Otherwise it wouldn't be automated. You would only just scrape the same person each and every time you trigger the flow. So I just pulled this from the left, from the input side. You can see that this directly, this piece of code, actually because it's JSON code, translate into this. So we pull that information, what you can then, well, the post to the scraper was successful, as you can see on the right side. Interesting to note is that it says finished at is null, meaning it isn't finished yet. And that's why these merge node, these few nodes over here, were added to this flow. I'll go over them in a second, but let me finish it up. So once we've sent a post request to the scraper with this node, we've triggered it. So we've made it run. So now it's scraping whatever we're asking from it. In this case, a personal LinkedIn profile from someone, but we still need to retrieve that data. And to do that, we kind of set up the exact same node, just a bit easier. And we set it to get because we want to get the information. So as I just said, the method is set to get instead of to post. And there is also a different URL. What you can see in green, once again, is an expression. It's from the left side and it's just the default dataset ID, which is the individual ID of the dataset meaning all of the scraped information we wanted it to retrieve. So now you know how to trigger a scraper in Apify and how to essentially use any API out there. Let me go over why there is a merge node and why there is an if node and a wait node. That is because if you trigger a scraper, it takes a while for it to start running. Depending on whatever you ask from it, it might take a while to scrape all the information. So, and there's no real way of you knowing when it's done. So once, let's say this merge node would not be there, once this node is completed, which takes a split second, it would immediately tell the next HTTP GET node to get the dataset ID or to get the information from the dataset, but it isn't ready yet. Most likely the scraper hasn't even started running. So there is no information to be passed on to the large language model. So we need a workaround. In previous videos, I used a wait node instead of a merge node and just set it to a minute. So it would wait a minute each and every time. But some smart people in the comments on my previous video pointed out that there might be a different way to kind of re-trigger every 10 seconds or whatever to see if the scraper is done. And that's what these nodes are for. So if there's no output, this code says there's no output and does output the not ready, then that is forwarded to a if node, which just simply checks if the information is ready or not. Well, if there's no information, the previous node, as I just showed, the code node has output not ready, meaning it is sent down the false branch. Well, what's on the false branch is a wait node, which waits 10 seconds before forwarding all the information again. And that's why this merge node is needed, because every time a wait node is triggered and it forwards or it outputs anything, it doesn't keep the information from the beginning of the flow. So we need to store the information from this because we want to keep the default dataset ID in this merge node. So whenever it's triggered again, it'll actually send the dataset ID, it'll actually attach this dataset ID. So we can kind of retrieve the data once again. So I really hope that made it clear for everyone. And this is also a very nifty trick to check if an API is done, or if a scraper is done, or whatever API call you've made. I don't know if some of you guys are returning viewers, but a few videos ago I made a scraper which scraped Apollo for leads. And that was also, there was some manual labor involved. Well, manual labor is within brackets, but there was some manual input involved, because I just had to check within Apify, which shows me if the run is done, yes or no, before I could continue on. But if you would just copy like this part of the workflow and paste it after any HTTP node which triggers an API, this could also be automated. So there's no need anymore for you to do any manual checks. Well, we've received the data. On the right side, you can see the output. So this is the output from the data set. Let me put it to schema so it's easy for you to see. Well, Nick Mitchell, we know that, we can verify that because that's his name in the lead list. We can see his description on his LinkedIn profile. We can see when he started his job. Got a lot of information. I mean, depending on someone's personal LinkedIn profile, not everyone is as active and has posted the same thing as everyone else, but there are some general trends. 9 out of 10 times it states where they work. So the problem with the output we've received from like the data set, so from the scraper, is that all of this is split. So as you can see in the JSON, whatever, I don't really know. Yeah, as you can see, it's all split. It's not one large piece of text. So if you would input this into an LLM, let me show you. So you would ask the LLM something. Let's say you ask it to summarize. You would have to drag everything from the left individually, which is a lot of hassle, certainly because not all information is available always. So it would also give you some error codes, and it makes it very difficult for the LLM to read. So that's why I'm using this code node. What this code node does is take everything from the left side and put it into one large piece of text. For us, is maybe a bit difficult to read, but for the LLM, because it isn't that much information, it's quite easy. Let me show you. Here you see his first name, last name, occupation. So first name, last name, occupation. It's even in the same order. Simple piece of code. ChatGPT generated it for me, to be honest. And then lastly, we go into a large language model node. For summaries and stuff like that, I usually use ChatGPT. The model I use is Mini. I mean, this is just a showcase example, but honestly, for things like this, like summarizing someone's personal LinkedIn profile or even their company website, I use Mini because it's more than capable of performing a task like this. This is the prompt. I've received a lot of questions from people if I could paste the prompt somewhere. I've actually decided to start a school community. It'll be done in like a month or so, and I'll just copy and paste all of these flows, including the prompts there. So please have a bit of patience. It'll be there. But I suggest using this as a foundation, not straight up copying it. So the prompt is very straightforward. I'll go over it quickly. I'm just telling it you'll receive data scraped from a LinkedIn profile. Use this data to answer the following questions concisely and clearly. What is the person's current role? Well, you can see their current role on the right side. They're a co-founder. How long have they been at their company? This is also duration at the company. Have they had any other roles at the company? If yes, what were they? Well, they're a founder, so it's very unlikely they've had any other roles because they started the company and have been there since the beginning. But let's say you're targeting someone or you're sending cold emails to someone who is currently head of HR but started all the way at the bottom of the ladder. It might be interesting to say something about that, about their career development. Same goes where they go to school. I think it's a bit too personal, but maybe if both of you went to the same school, it might be a good way of creating a bond. And then lastly, write a brief summary. This is just based upon the about section of someone. This is a brief summary, but it does give you or someone from your sales team quite a good overview of who you're talking to. And this is a good starting point also for writing a personalization. You can also just input this as like data into another LLM to write the personalization for you. And then lastly, I've attached it here so you guys can just follow along, is another Airtable node which would have updated the record. So here all the way at the beginning, you would get a lead list from Apollo or Sales Navigator, whatever. You would just upload all of those leads into your CRM, but they wouldn't be enriched. Then inside of your CRM, you would press a button or change the status, anything to trigger, to send a webhook. And to activate this flow, then it would go through the flow, activate the scraper, check if the scraper is done, get the information once it's done, send it up here, summarize or answer questions, whatever. and then upload all of the answers to the CRM so you can just find it later on, which brings us on to the next flow, which is a lot easier, both for me to explain and for everyone else to understand. So let me just trigger this flow. So the flow would have started the same way by a webhook. Then you once again retrieve all the information. It's the same information because it's the same record ID from the person. Then we want to scrape the company LinkedIn. The company LinkedIn, for some reason, is always public. It's always open, so there's never any difficulty retrieving the HTML. So I just put the URL in here, say get, and on the output side you can see it's all the HTML from the page. A lot of this, like all of the code, is unnecessary for us, and we of course want to reduce cost. So we want to reduce input tokens. That's why this code node is here. Same goes for this, but I'll go over this in a second. This code node, all it does is remove all of the HTML, so it replaces everything with null. So you can see how this was all cluttered and difficult to read. And then on the right side is the output, which is just plain text. Easy for us to read, easy for the LLM to read, and also a lot less input tokens, which makes it cheaper, or even cheaper. I know some people on previous videos, comments have mentioned DeepSeek. I have been playing around with DeepSeek. It's very good because this is a flow, or these are flows I personally used. I also thought it would be best if I just continued using ChatGPT, because that would be most true to what I know best, and what I know performs best. For the other one, I haven't had enough tries or haven't worked with it long enough to know if the data is consistent. And then for the LLM, I'll quickly go over the script. As you can already see the output. So I've done the same thing. I've just said you will receive data scraped from a company's LinkedIn profile, and I've asked it to answer some questions like what type of company is it, what products do they sell, and in this case, like on a company's LinkedIn profile, there's also always posts, and it's very easy to retrieve those posts. So I've asked it to retrieve the 3 most recent posts. Think back to the email templates I showed you in the beginning, and then especially to the one on the right, like the highly personalized one. There was within brackets personalization. I read through this quickly. Oh, well, here, there's the new newsletter is live. So a personalized line you could let AI write would be based upon this post, which would say, hey, interesting read in your newsletter, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, it wouldn't be true. You didn't read it. But it's very easy for you to kind of go back if there's ever a sales call to make sure he doesn't figure it out. And the same thing goes for identify their company type. So I used type of company as a variable within the template. So you could just let the AI fill it in based on the information it retrieves from their company LinkedIn. Last but definitely not least is I'll trigger this flow and show you that it's exactly the same as the one for the company LinkedIn profile. So once again, we pull the information from the CRM. Why do we need this? Well, we need this because we need their company website, we need their LinkedIn URL, and we need their company LinkedIn URL. Then we use the company website here to get all the HTML from the website. Once again, as you can see, just as it did for the LinkedIn page, it's all cluttered. So this is exactly the same code. So both of these flows are identical. The only thing that's different is here we're using the URL to the LinkedIn company page, and here we're just using the URL to the homepage of the company. So once again, this code node has filtered out all of the unnecessary code and retrieved only plain text. And then same as for each and every one of these, I've just asked it some questions. You can read through it yourself. On pages, there are also like testimonials a lot of the times and success stories. It might be interesting to mention something about previous successes they've had. It's always an ego boost if someone mentions how good you've been doing with someone else. So these are testimonials about Left Up, which is the name of the company, I guess, and how good it has been to work with them. So yeah, I mean, you could just say, hey, congrats on your success with Hub and things like that. Now that you've seen how this workflow operates, let's talk about the real benefits. Using AI and automation to enrich leads takes seconds instead of minutes, well, instead of maybe an hour, making it a game changer for efficiency. This workflow isn't just a standalone solution, it is a part of a larger system which you can implement to either significantly reduce the workload on your sales team, or if you're just starting out, to land you your first client. With all the data you've gathered, AI can seamlessly personalize email templates, just like the example I showed earlier, helping you stand out and connect with potential clients effortlessly. I want to give you a takeaway to keep in mind is don't rely on AI to write your entire emails from scratch. Instead, treat AI like an assistant. AI is incredibly effective for generating ideas, personalizing details, or refining specific sections, but it still needs your guidance to maintain a consistent tone and structure. When crafting your emails, focus on building a reusable framework that you can refine and personalize over time. This approach would actually allow you to run proper split tests to figure out what resonates most with your audience. For example, it would allow you to experiment with subject lines, call to action, phrasing, or the level of personalization in your opening lines. What would be my tip is to use AI to handle repetitive tasks like gathering data, generalizing personalization, snippets, or analyzing split test results. This saves you a lot of time while still giving you control over the creative process so you can continuously improve your outreach. I mean, if you're excited, start setting up this system today. It's a practical and scalable way to take your cold outreach to the next level without sacrificing any quality or performance. What I've shown you just now is one part of a much larger system for cold outbound outreach. If you already have a B2B business and are exploring cold email as a new way to acquire clients, or if you're looking to improve your existing outreach, I can help. There's a link in the description below to book a discovery call. During the call, I'll show you exactly how I can build and manage a fully automated cold email outreach system tailored to your business specifically. From crafting the perfect offer to writing personalized email copy and handling all the technical setup, I'll take care of everything. That way you can focus on closing deals and scaling your business. I want to thank all of you guys so much for watching. If you found this helpful, please leave a like. It really helps the channel grow. If you've got any questions somehow, drop them in the comments below. I read every single one of them and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And don't forget to subscribe for more actionable content. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.